Dr. Payne, you want to do a mic check real quick? We can hear you.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yep, we can hear you. It's a little bit muffled, but we can hear you.
Is now any better?
Much better.
Perfect.
Superintendent Spearman, do you want to do a quick mic check, make sure your audio works?
Good afternoon. I hope you're hearing me.
We are. Thank you.
Beautiful. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Just got here. John.
We do have attendees that are in the meeting. So
Okay, wonderful. Excellent job today, John. Thank you.
thanks to everyone that's joined so far. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Dr. Mathis, do a quick mic check and make sure your audio is working. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
We are good to go. I'm going to give another minute or two. We've got a large group of people currently joining, so give them one more minute to get logged on before we start. All right, I have 2 minutes past, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for taking some time out of their afternoons to join us for this important conversation and have the ability to provide input and feedback and ask some questions as well. Before we get into the heart of the presentation, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Throughout this presentation, as you have questions or as you have thoughts and feedback, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function that's on WebEx. It should be on the right hand or the bottom of your screen. You can ask questions to the full, to everyone that's joined today. You can ask questions directly to us if you'd like them to be a little bit more private. The chat function, same thing. You can ask questions to us, or you can ask questions that will be able to be viewed in the full public forum. If after hearing in the material that we present today, you want to take some time and think and do some research and get back to us on any feedback or input you may have, you can use the feedback form. It is linked here on your screen. It's also available by visiting our website. That's just ed.sc.gov. It's on the front page. And of course, you can always email us feedback, and that email address is just communications@ed.sc.gov. And you can use the chat in the Q&A or visit the feedback form or email us throughout this, and we will respond to the feedback that we can, and we look forward to receiving your input. I am going to turn it over now to our State Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman, to give a welcome and just talk a little bit about the importance of gaining public feedback as it relates to the receipt of this federal funds. And then from there, we'll get to our two presenters and then on to Q&A. So Superintendent Spearman, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Ryan, and good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate you joining in for this discussion tonight. I will say briefly that we are better in this all together. We have an extraordinary opportunity here in South Carolina with the funding that has come available to us to really transform education in our state. We cannot use the excuse of we don't have enough money, because you will see there is a lot of funding coming available. Our task now is to put our heads together and to make plans to spend this funding the most appropriate way, the most efficient way that will give us the best return of improvement for our students and opportunities for our students and support for our students and our teachers as we go through the next few years. We don't claim to have all the ideas in Columbia. We know that many of you have great ideas. You may have questions. We need you to question us. We need you to help us think through this. And you have ideas as well as to how best to make an impact in South Carolina's public education system, particularly for those students who have been most impacted by COVID-19. So without further ado, I want to thank Dr. John Payne and Dr. David Mathis and all of the staff at the department Ryan Brown, as they are working together to answer all of the questions that the U.S. Department of Education needs to hear from us, to get feedback from our stakeholders, to make plans, work with our school districts. And we are trying to incentivize our districts, because they too have a lot of decisions to be made, an extraordinary amount of money coming to them that they need to make the best decisions also. There are plenty of places to spend this money, but we want to know where's the best place, where will we get the most improvement and help our students so that they will have every opportunity, not only academically and during the regular school day, but after school in after school programs and for their social and emotional well-being as well. So Dr. Payne, thank you for all you have done, Dr. Mathis, and I'll turn it over to you.
And thank you, Superintendent Spearman. here on your screen, you'll see just a short agenda. We are not planning to talk for a long period of time. We really want to hear directly from you all and allow you to ask questions and have those allow us to answer them for you. So Dr. John Payne is going to give an overview of these funds, the public input that is required, and then Dr. David Mathis is going to talk about the state's response thus far and what we are thinking as we are developing our state plan that is due very soon to the U.S. Department of Education. So Dr. John Payne, I will control the slides for you, and you can begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Superintendent Spearman, and more importantly, thank you all of you who have joined tonight. The last year, all of our lives have been changed significantly by the COVID-19 pandemic. And as a result, Congress and both President Trump and President Biden have signed a variety of emergency bills into law. The most recent one that's come about, which is why we're seeking your input, is a significantly larger amount of money coming into South Carolina that gives us a historic opportunity to transform education in South Carolina. On March 11th, 2021, just a couple months ago, the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARP Act, was signed into law. And through this law, or through this act, the U.S. Department of Education is providing an additional $122 billion to states for the elementary and secondary school emergency relief, or we call it ESSER 3 fund. This is called ESSER 3 because prior, in March of 2020, there was the CARES Act that passed that authorized ESSER 1. In December, there was another coronavirus relief law that was signed into law that provided additional money. And now we have this ESSER 3 fund that you see is providing South Carolina with an unprecedented amount of money. So under ESSER 3, South Carolina will receive $2,112,051,487 in ESSER 3 funds. 90% of this money which is about $1.9 billion, will flow directly through to our school districts who will have to develop plans and get public input. Most of the money, as you see, will be spent at the local level. So we encourage you to be active in discussions and conversations with your school districts as they develop their plans and give that public input, be it through your local school board meetings or other ways that the district may be taking input. But we, as Superintendent Spearman said, we need to hear from you at the state level as well as the local level as well. We will be putting in place a lot of monitoring and oversight with this because at the end of the day, this is my taxpayer money, this is your taxpayer money, and we want to make sure that we have the most impact with this funds, but we are also using taxpayer dollars wisely. The remaining amount, the 10% left, $211,205,148, will be used at the state level. We will keep that amount here for state level activities to address issues caused by COVID-19. So part of what we have to do at the state is to develop a plan and submit it for review to the U.S. Department of Education. And so part of what that can give us ideas on how best to spend this $211 million. But let me be clear in saying that this is not a one and done deal, because not only do we need to develop the plan, but we're going to implement the plan and get feedback as we go along. So we appreciate your input, not only as we develop this plan, but as we carry it out over the next several years. With this money, South Carolina, both at the Department of Education and our local school districts, will have until September 30th of 2024 to spend all of this money. So we do have some years, but that will go by very quickly, and it is a lot of money. So we do want to hear your feedback and your input to what we have to do. There are some specific things that we have to do with the $211 million we're keeping at the state level. So in this law, it specifies that South Carolina and all states have to spend money in 3 areas. First, we have to spend of our $211 million, 5% of the total, or the 5% of the $2 billion, which comes out to be about 105 million, a little more than 105 million, for the implementation of evidence-based interventions aimed at specifically addressing learning loss such as summer learning, summer enrichment, extended day, comprehensive after-school programs, and extended school year programs. Again, we have from now until September 30th of 2024 to develop these state level activities and plans and implement them. Additionally, we have to spend 1% of the total, or little over $21 million, for evidence-based summer enrichment programs, and another 1%, or a little over $21 million, for evidence-based comprehensive after-school programs. So when you total those 3 amounts up, our $211 million that we have, those come up to about $148 million. The remainder of the funds we can spend on other emergency needs as we continue to address and move through this pandemic. So again, 5% for summer learning, for learning loss, 1% for summer enrichment, and 1% for after-school programs. School districts will be developing their plans and attending to these items as well. So what we're doing at the state level, we want to be broad and not be duplicated at the local level entirely, so that we can, again, get the biggest bang for our buck. And it is important that we get public input, and not only are we required to, we want to, and we want to get input from diverse stakeholders to help us develop the plans for the use of these monies. And these stakeholders include, but are not just limited to, hearing from students, families, civil rights organizations, disability rights organizations, school and district administrators, teachers, school staff, stakeholders representing the interest of students with disabilities or our English learners, or our children who are experiencing homelessness, or children who may be in foster care, our migrant students, our students who are incarcerated, and any other underserved group. Because we know that oftentimes these students may have had significant impacts because of the barriers they face. So we want to hear from all of these groups and get public input, and we just ask that you assist us in giving us some ideas, giving us some suggestions, and asking us questions. With that, I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Dr. David Mathis, to talk about our state response thus far to COVID-19.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Superintendent Spearman and Ryan, for providing this opportunity. What I want to spend a few minutes talking about are how we will use the money to recover academically, socially, emotionally, and address the mental health needs of all of our students. And we know that students learn differently, and that no one approach will recover from where we are. And we know that we will have to take different approaches for our students, but it's the most promising practices that we're looking for. Oftentimes you hear educators and others talk about the learning loss that we've experienced from the pandemic. I prefer to say this is unfinished learning. What we did lose was instructional time, but we now need to recover and pick up from where we left off, and make that yearly growth that all students need to make. And then for those students who are behind, who may not be on grade level, we know that they will need not only the yearly growth, but they will also need the accelerated growth. There's a lot of urgency for us to get to this work, but I think the foundation that we lay in planning and carefully planning and being very strategic with our plans will pay off for us much better in the long run. So what have we already done? There's some things that we have had through our ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 money that Dr. Payne talked to you about. So I want to just take a few minutes and talk to you about things that we already have done. We know that access to a quality, viable curriculum and instructional materials is key to student success. But we also know that through the pandemic, we realize there is a huge equity gap in our state in our most underserved areas of having access to those quality resources. So Superintendent Spearman charged the department with providing a way to deliver quality resources to every classroom in the state. And that is what we now know as the Learning Object Repository, or what we call in South Carolina as the Instruction Hub. And if you'll think about this as a huge mega digital library that is a one-stop place where all teachers in the state can go and pull out the most robust resources that are aligned to our content standards. If we want our students to make gains academically, socially, emotionally, one of the best things we can do is make sure we teach to those grade level standards. So we want to load this repository that will be available to every teacher in the state, some of the most robust resources they can have. So in that mega digital library, you'll find resources that we have purchased that not every district could afford. And now they have access to those resources. It will also house some of our best lessons and units that have been developed by some of our most effective teachers across the state. We're loading those this summer, and then they will be available to all teachers in the state. And a quality lesson in one district now can be delivered appropriately will be available to a teacher in another district. I say this to you about the Learning Object Repository. This is a work in progress. We have it loaded with some of the materials that we purchased. We'll be putting those lesson plans, start with the lesson plans this summer. But this is a place that you could recommend to us, other things that we could load into the repository that we haven't thought of that could be available to all of our teachers in the state. This could be a real time saver and a huge resource for our teachers. We also are examining our reading curriculum in our most underserved areas and for our the most underperforming districts. And this really affects our early childhood K-2, K-3 reading curriculum, and making sure that it is appropriate, it is the most robust, and it teaches the skills that develop the best literacy skills for our students. So by the time they leave third grade, they are on grade level. And so with that, we're conducting curriculum audits in our most underserved schools and helping them put together the best reading curriculum that they need to develop for their students. Coupled with that, we're providing literacy training to these same teachers. And this is around the area of science of reading. That's a new term that a lot of you have heard about, but the science of reading really focuses on the student and how the student learns literacy and how to learns the literacy skills and reading skills best. And it helps the teacher pinpoint where deficiencies are and where they need to address new instruction. We're also providing math interventions statewide to all of our elementary students. We know that by the time students leave 4th, 5th grade, that they need to have a strong foundation in math skills so that will put them on the pathway to good college ready skills in middle and high school. And so we are providing a math intervention for all elementary schools in the state. And it is an individual program that each student can log into, but it assesses each student's individual skills, then adjust lessons, 15-minute lessons a day on how then they can best meet the skills of where they need to be. And so it adapts to their skill level, and as students are successful, it then takes them to the next level. So this has a lot of promise for our state. Also, we are expanding our virtual SC to middle grades right now. For the past number of years, it has been basically focused on high school credit-bearing classes. But during the pandemic, we saw a huge opportunity to expand this into our middle grades. So students that are enrolled in public school or homeschooled, they can as well look at the sign on to courses that they may need. It will expand to middle grades, and some students have a hard time fitting certain courses into their schedule. So a new opportunity for students and a new platform for them to learn. We're also looking at piloting with the ESSER II money, a social emotional learning pilot, after school pilot. This is a new area in a lot of ways, a new learning area for many in the state. And so rather than another way to build social emotional learning is in those times in successful after school programs. So we're going to pilot a few of those across the state. All districts are required to submit an academic recovery plan, and they have been given a common set of data that examines their performance in English language arts and math, as well as other areas, but primarily English language arts and math. And they are by Friday, this Friday, the 28th, to submit a recovery plan of how they plan to address this unfinished learning. What are their strategies that they will use to accelerate learning for those who are behind, but also provide that grade level instruction for all students? They're to set actionable goals and to outline the strategies of how they will accomplish this. The department is reading each of these plans. We've also engaged with a third party to help us read these plans and provide feedback to districts. And this is a place where as districts plan and they see progress and they can keep moving with that progress, this is a multi-year plan. But if they see that their strategies aren't working and they need to go in a different direction, it gives them the opportunity to redirect and find a more serviceable solution. But all districts are submitting those academic recovery plans by this Friday, and we are requiring that these plans, the academic recovery plans, are then tied to the ESSER plan that John Payne just talked to you about. So what about things that we're thinking about and planning and considering for the future, especially with our ESSER III money? We know that, as I said, the urgency to start to address the recovery and address the needs of the whole child, but we have to do that in a very systemic and planned way. I think it's Woodrow Wilson who said, use the brain that you have, but all that you can borrow. And this is the place where we need to borrow the brains of other people to make sure that we have the most equitable and robust plan that we can have. So number one, through sub-grants that districts have, they can submit sub-grants to the department. If they have matching funds through their ESSER money, through their local ESSER money, or through local funds that they have, if they write a plan and a grant that supports evidence-based, and that is research-proven, evidence-based practices, and those that align with the goals of the department after we've received your input, and that guarantee that annual growth and that accelerated growth. We would then support those districts by providing additional funds to carry out those goals. Well, what are some of those evidence-based practices that we would consider to be good. One is high dosage tutoring. And high dosage tutoring is really a minimum of 3 sessions per week of 30 to 60 minutes of instruction. Either it's in small groups or individual, primarily individual, but it is intensive and designed to address the skill gaps of a student. We would emphasize here, especially a literacy model, especially in pre-K through 2nd grade, pre-K through 3rd grade, to address the gaps in the literacy skills that some students have to really accelerate them to grade level. Also for our older students, upper elementary, middle, and high, the high dosage tutoring in math as well. We also would consider extended learning time, and that could be additional days at the beginning of the year, added days to the end of the year, but also to extend the day during the school year to make sure that there's adequate time for that high dosage tutoring, for that strong opportunities to accelerate learning. And sometimes more time is needed for that. So to provide time for that. It could be year-round calendars. As school districts look at their calendars and make the most use of their time, year-round calendars could be a consideration. It could be a school within a school model, looking at students who need additional help in crafting out a school within a school model in that district and focusing on certain areas of acceleration and remediation during that time. It also could be considered what we call micro-teaching. During the day, when there's intensive instruction that needs to take place in small chunks of time, but for a shorter amount of time, to make sure that the student has mastered those skills before they move to the next level. But you've heard me talk a lot about English language arts and math, but we know that there's more to that for our students, and we should be respectful and responsible to help students and address the needs of the whole child. And so we are looking, and we have had conversations with the arts community of how this could look as we move forward in with the ESSER funds. We know that our art students, our art programs have suffered significantly during the pandemic. And some of those were the ones that lost the most time, instructional time, and opportunities lost for students. But we're looking in the arts to lean to the arts to see how we can provide more opportunities, well-rounded opportunities, more equitable opportunities for our students in the arts, because we know that is a place that many of our students excel, and we don't want to deny them the opportunity. But we also know that arts, when integrated well, can also support the content areas, especially in literacy and math. So how now can we take the arts curriculum and use it to integrate and support the content areas and recover from that unfinished learning? We also know that there's an opportunity in the arts to establish career paths for our students. This is something that South Carolina does not have, a career path and a completer system for the arts. For those students who want a career in the arts, or who want to a career that is supported by the arts, or that a career that we know that the arts have trained them well for. So how do we get that into our system as well? And our folks in the arts community, we are leaning on heavily to help outline that and articulate what that would look like. But we also know that in the arts, there's an opportunity that students experience in school through daily instruction, through performance, and through assessment, and those skills carry over to the workforce. And when done well, and when those practices are strengthened during school time, during their K-12 curriculum, years, then they can follow as well into their adult life. We also we're looking at assisting our students with on-time graduation and making sure that the pandemic, even though we've lost instructional time, that students haven't suffered for that. And how can we now make sure through innovative approaches that we accelerate those opportunities for students to graduate on time, but be ready for post-secondary, whether it's a career, whether it's military, whether it's technical school, whether it's a four-year college. How can we do that? And so we know that we need to be very strategic and innovative in how we do this. So we want to develop a system here that prepares students that remediation isn't needed once they leave high school, that we've taken care of that before they leave high school. And that's going to take some innovative approaches to do that. But we also want students to know clearly what are their career choices? Where are the opportunities for their next level of education once they leave high school? And that's going to involve making sure that students know what they're interested in, but also have the aptitude to do that beyond high school. So making that match and make sure there's an interest and an aptitude for that career that they may be choosing, and that they have know where the opportunities are to receive a strong post-secondary education. We also want to focus on how we can support social emotional learning. And this is an area that during the pandemic we realized needed significant attention. And there's a lot of misunderstanding around social emotional learning, but it's easy to describe as those skills in life that are hard to measure. We can measure literacy skills and math skills, but the social emotional learning skills are those skills that are hard to measure, but really probably are the ones that measure, those skills are the ones that really connect to success after school more than any other. So these are the skills that our young people acquire that help them develop the responsible attitudes toward how to make wise decisions. How do you take ownership of your learning? How do you collaborate and work as a team? How do you understand your own learning, but how do you understand that of others as well? How do you problem solve? How do you communicate and articulate and express your ideas? How do you work independently? How do you design solutions to the problems that you're faced with? And then how do you develop leadership skills to help rally those around you as well? Our work in this is just beginning, but we know it's an important place. We do not want this to be an add-on to our teachers as another thing. This is something that should be integrated into the classroom and something that is a byproduct of the classroom. And so to do this work, we are very fortunate. Sarah Gams, the 2021 Teacher of the Year, will be joining the department to lead this work. And I think coming from the heart of a teacher, this will be one that we will get right because it comes and will be led by a teacher. Those are some of the key things that we're considering and working toward. But I want to say that all the opportunities outlined here that we've addressed can be addressed during the school day, but they also can be addressed in robust summer programs, after school programs, and all of those programs during the school day, during after school programs, during summer school should all be aligned and promote as we engage students and accelerate their learning. And finally, as we accelerate learning for all students, especially now, we should be focused and strategic and relentless in our efforts to make sure that we get this right. And so we promise that there will be measures in place to monitor the activities, the promising practices that we develop, and to evaluate that progress, and to promote and scale up the most promising practices, but redirect where progress is not being made. So Ryan, Molly, John, I'll turn it back over to you, and we're glad to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Mathis, and Dr. Payne as well for covering a large amount of information. I've watched him present on this many, many times, and it can be, many hours long presentation. So I know that was a little lengthy, but trust me, it's just about as concise as you can make all of this information. It's a lot to unpack in a short period of time. I just want to reiterate that if you have questions on anything they spoke about or questions about things that they did not speak about, feel free to put that in the chat or the Q&A function. You can also email your feedback to our communications@ed.sce.gov email address, or fill out our feedback form, which is linked here. We did get questions throughout this, so I'm going to try to go in order to be fair to those that asked them early on. And some of these have already been answered to the individuals that asked them privately, but I think that they're important for the audience as a whole to hear. So Dr. Payne, this question is going to go to you. Can you clarify the timeline for these funds? And there's a lot of different dates associated with this money. So can you clarify what, in terms of deadlines, is coming up, what plans have to be submitted and the timeline for doing those for receipt of the funds, and then how long the state and school districts have to actually spend this money?
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, I'm going to talk about this in terms of our state plan, and then I'm going to talk about it in terms of the district level. So for our state plan, we are working on developing our state plan right now. And we will have to submit our draft state plan to the U.S. Department of Education on June 7th, so about 2 weeks from today. Once we submit it, they will review it, provide us feedback, and we hope with the excellent plans that we have in place, and plus getting additional great ideas from you and other stakeholders, that they will go ahead and approve our plan and we can begin implementing it from the state level. School districts have 2 plans to complete. The first is they have a return to in-person plan, which shouldn't be too hard for our school districts because our schools are back face-to-face for offer a face-to-face opportunity. That plan has to be posted by June 24th. The bigger plan, how are you going to spend the money? What are you going to do, district, in spending your district money? That plan has to be submitted to the department for our review and approval by August 24th of this summer. So they will have about 90 days from today or about 3 months to complete their district plan. With both the in-person plan and most especially with their ESSER plan, school districts have to get public input. And so we encourage you to participate in your local school board meetings, reach out to your districts. I'm aware that some districts are going to put a portal on their district webpage is a way of getting input from stakeholders, but do reach out to them. Then comes the task of implementing these programs and spending the money that goes along with it. And we will have until September the 30th, 2024 to spend this $2.1 billion. So a really busy spring and summer. And then comes the hard work of now implementing it and monitoring it and making sure we're seeing these great outcomes that we hope happen.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. You actually answered a couple of questions with that response, so I appreciate that. The next question is really, it's Dr. Mathis' subject area, but Dr. Payne, it has to do with this funding. So the question is, can these funds be used to support career and technical education programs? And an example of job shadowing or apprenticeships was given.
Yes. So with these ESSER funds, school districts have 15 categories they can spend the money. And one of them is any allowable activity under the Carl T. Perkins law, which is a federal law about career development. And so that would be an allowable use of district's money in doing that.
And I'm asking a very similar program, a very similar question. There was concern about family literacy and helping the adults, many of which who have assisted teachers this school year with instruction, either from home or during some type of hybrid learning format. Can these funds be used to address adult education and family literacy programs?
This is John again. Yes, I think that would certainly be an allowable use of the funds. And so in addition to parent training, because we recognize that it's going to take all of us working together, and that includes parents and teachers and other providers in the school to accelerate children's learning and really get this COVID pandemic behind us. And so that is allowable, as well as just parent engagement. So opportunities for parents to come together and engage with one another and have conversations. Those are allowable uses at the district level too.
John, David, Brian, if I may just add a point there, and David, you may need to elaborate, but many of the resources that we are purchasing licensures for, whether it's a math intervention or a literacy intervention, many of those can be used at home, and parents can sit with their child to do the intervention. So it's not just all things that will be used at school. We want to make this available so that there are resources that parents would have at home as well. Good resources, easy to use, that they can sit down with their child. Right, David?
That's correct. And what we are hoping to accomplish with that is meaningful ways for parents to engage in the learning of their children, and then to have good conversations with their teachers as they engage at home in those resources. Then that leads to some robust conversations with teachers of how best to help their children. So, and we'll have those in some of the resources that we purchase, and many of those will be placed into the repository. And I would add that this is a excellent place for districts, especially around the adult learning and the family literacy, to look at the outlay of their school district and what areas need the most help, especially when it comes to family literacy, and to target those skills.
Thank you. And I've got one more question related to allowable use of funds, and Superintendent Spearman, you may want to chime in on this as well. There's a question if these funds can be used for upgrading school facilities or for new school construction.
Sure, John, I'll take a shot at that. Yes, our ESSER 2 funds and ESSER 3 funds, which we are talking about mainly tonight, both of them have the categories added for facility upgrades, air quality improvements. So we are already hearing from districts that many of them are planning to do work over the summer, whether it's with their HVAC system, air quality, renovations to the school where they need extra space, whatever it might be. And in some cases, actually planning new construction. This needs to be, because renovating the old building is just really a waste of money, quite honestly. It gets to that point where the renovations cost more than the new construction. So this money can be used for that. Already we have districts sending in requests, plan for our Office of School Facilities to review to make sure that the upgrades or the construction would be allowable. And then of course, some things can be done without a lot of oversight from the Office of School Facilities. Other things need considerable oversight. So we are hiring extra people in that office and contracting with private groups so that we can handle what we think is going to be a huge workload. I will add that the State General Assembly on the Senate side, we're in the process right now of getting our state budget approved. And the Senate did add some additional infrastructure funding, about 85 million, of 100 million on one line, and 85 of that can be used for infrastructure, new construction in the neediest areas in our state. So I'm hoping we're on the verge of being able to fix a problem that we really need to address. Out-of-date infrastructure, particularly in some of our poorest areas of the state that cannot raise the tax millage to cover the costs. The mill of a tax is just so low, the value of a mill is so low. So we're trying to leverage all of this funding together in a way that would really be beneficial for improved infrastructure in the state. John, do you have anything else to add to that? Okay.
Ma'am, I think you hit it all.
And Superintendent Spearman, you touched on this, but Dr. Payne, perhaps you could expand a little bit further. There was a parent in the chat who expressed some concern with the accountability piece for school districts and the monitoring and state oversight. So can you speak a little bit about the protocols that we have in place at the agency and the level of support that we're providing to make sure these funds are spent correctly?
Absolutely. So the Department of Education has a long history. We have entire offices and teams and divisions whose job is to do just that. They provide monitoring and oversight to make sure that with the federal funds we usually get, which is about $1 billion a year, that we are using those funds according to all the rules and all the regulations that come with it. These ESSER funds are no different. So there is a level of oversight and monitoring that we have to take. Part of what we do is we have districts complete an application on the front end, and we look at that application and provide feedback and sometimes ask for questions, because we'd much rather to make sure on the front end that we're addressing any issues so that we don't have any issues on the back end when we monitor it. School districts are also required to submit quarterly reports to the department that tell us by these different categories how they've spent the money, what they've spent, and how much they've spent. And we review those as well. We also undertake on-site or desk monitoring of our school districts, and there we will go in and ask to see for the backup documentation. So for example, if they purchased 100 computers, we're going to want to go in and see the inventory to make sure, and the invoice to make sure they've purchased these 100 devices. With ESSER 3, as Dr. Mathis said a little earlier, we will be monitoring some programming. And that basically means as districts are putting their plans together and identifying what interventions they're going to do with their students at the district level, we're going to be following up with them to make sure that they're implementing those interventions. And if those are not being successful, what the district is doing, as Dr. Mathis talked about, to retool and refocus their work to do something that will show a promising practice that is changing outcomes for students. And lastly, we have a lot of reporting. So we have monthly reports that we have to submit to the U.S. Department of Education, annual reports. So there's a host of work that we do to make sure that at the end of the day, these are improving outcomes, but at the same time that we're being accountable for these taxpayer funds.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. We have a question as to whether or not the 90% that flows to school districts, if that includes our charter schools.
It does. So we had to use the U.S. Department of Education gave states a formula that's based on our Title I funds, which is our funds that we get under the Every Student Succeeds Act that used to be known as the No Child Left Behind Act. And so we used that formula to come up with every district's allocation. Those allocations are on our ESSER 3 website. And since both the Public Charter School District as well as the Institute at Erskine get Title I funds, they also were included in this. And then charter schools within LEAs, within our traditional school districts, again, that's the school district should be allocating based on whatever those needs are.
Thank you, Dr. Payne. I have a question about expanding pre-service teacher programs at state universities through teacher fellows or otherwise, or expanding out of state teacher recruiting initiatives, basically measures to address the teacher recruitment and retention crisis that has gotten worse through the pandemic. A big piece of this plan that we have to submit to the U.S. Department of Education is deals with supporting the educator workforce. So I don't know that we have any specifics to share about plans to support particular initiatives at this point, but it's absolutely going to be a piece of our plan, and we are working with the Commission on Higher Education and a lot of our deans and colleges and universities throughout the state. So that will absolutely be included. And again, once we have the plan together, we'll be posting on our website, and we will want your feedback on that plan. And there'll be opportunities throughout the time that we're carrying out for us to adjust and amend that, so that we're adequately serving the state's needs. So good question about how we're going to be directly addressing the teacher shortage, and that certainly is a top agenda item. And we hope to have some additional information to share soon. Superintendent Spearman or John or David, is there anything you wanted to add on teacher recruitment or retention?
Well, I just a bit, that's a great question. Back in 2015, we had a task force even then as to how we could support teacher retention and teacher recruitment and retention in South Carolina, and had 16 or 17 recommendations that we took to the General Assembly. So I think it would be very wise for us, David, if we haven't done that already, to shake that off and to look back over those recommendations to see. Of course, one of those was improving salary. We've looked at some things with the praxis exams. We've got some pilots that we're offering in this current budget that we want to try with some options on praxis exams for candidates entering into their teacher ed program. But we are always open. In fact, I'd like to pose that question to all of you tonight, those who are online with us. If you have suggestions of how we might recruit better, I know a lot of ways we can help retain, but if you have suggestions there, because we all know that our students, these interventions, the best intervention is high dosage tutoring, as David mentioned earlier, and that takes a really good qualified teacher or someone really who's dedicated to that to work with students. So where do we find those people? And so I would just pose that as a question to you. If you have some suggestions on that. I know we've talked about recruiting college students, high school students to help with tutoring and giving them some training. And David, I know on the recruitment that you're looking at a company that might be offering some assistance to us in just the recruitment of teachers as a public some type of public announcement form. So I know you're talking with some groups who have some ideas, but I would pose that question back to you all as well to help us. If you have additional ideas that we've not thought of, send them our way tonight through this, or as Ryan has given you other options, ways that you want to think about it and send us ideas. It is a huge, that's a huge challenge in front of all of us. And particularly in our most rural areas where it's already very difficult to recruit teachers. And so we need your help on good suggestions there.
We have several pieces of feedback and several questions that are related to addressing mental health needs of students and their families, and if these funds will be used for that purpose, and how they might be used for that purpose. So, John or David or Superintendent Spearman, is there any information on mental health, either specifics or things that we're looking at that you want to share? I know that it is required to be a piece of this plan, but is there any specifics that we want to share? But we're definitely seeing, in the feedback that we received this evening, and also the feedback from stakeholders and the public received thus far, that mental health is a huge issue in the state.
Well, I think one of the ways that we're looking at is we're engaging in how to make the mental health services more accessible to families in the state, and making sure they have access to those. And I also know in the social emotional learning aspect, there's a tiered approach. And as we move through that, students, at what level of social emotional learning do they need support? But then how do we support and how will we support their families through that? But I think some of that, the access to quality mental health, is one of the places where we'll focus.
Right, and for the audience tonight to know, we realize that there is an issue in South Carolina for families who are uninsured. We realize there's an issue on giving therapeutic services at school, that some insurance companies do not cover that. I've just learned last week that the federal employee benefits do not cover therapeutic services given at school. So we are in contact. Some of these are issues that need to be solved, and not, we're very willing to help with this funding, but however, there's some real issues that need to be solved in the by those who work these plans out for benefits for employees. So I've been in contact with folks in DC on those issues. I've contacted one of our senators' offices to look at that and to see how best we can have representation with insurance companies that they cover the therapeutic services if they're given at school. Some of them will cover them if they're in the doctor's office, but not at school. And so we need to make this readily available. And so there are a lot of discussions on it. If any of you have suggestions on that, please send them to us. But we are working on it, and I think I'm very willing to possibly use some of our funding to help with that, but I don't think that is the full responsibility of the Department of Education. It's a bigger issue that needs to be solved, but we will do what we can to help. But I'm really working on trying to solve the issue of having access and good insurance coverage.
Thank you. Try to go to the next one. Dr. Mathis, this will be a question for you. It's talking about the science of reading and that reading curriculum, how teachers will get that, how it will go down to pre-service teachers. Can you speak about how they will have access to that curriculum that you spoke about earlier?
Sure, we'll start that focus. As you can tell, that's a significant amount of work to do that. So we will start with schools that we refer to as our Palmetto Literacy Project schools. Those are the schools that have 30% or more, 33% or more of their students and does not meet of our SC Ready state assessment. So we'll start there with those. Quite honestly, we have rolled out training for all of our literacy specialists in the science of reading through LETRS training that focuses on vocabulary, literacy, writing, all the components of that. And so we've started this year in several of our districts. We will move next year to another cohort, and then we'll have a cohort each year as we move through that until we have all of our K-3 teachers trained in that. As far as pre-service teachers, I do know there's an effort through Dr. Tammy Pulaski at Francis Marion to offer this to the other deans around the state, but that effort is also moving in higher ed as well.
Thank you. We've got several questions and comments about district plans, providing input to those plans, accessing those plans. So John, I may rely on you. Feel free to add to what I'm going to say, but I think a really great way to engage your local school district or school in the creation of these plans and feedback once the plan is created is through the local school improvement councils. Every school has one, the local PTA, gathering with an already set up entity that has already communication protocols in place that they communicate to and from the school district, I think is really helpful. I know the School Improvement Council is going to be hosting a webinar next week talking about how parents can best engage with their local schools and school districts in this process. So I would encourage you to visit their website and check that out, because those are already set up in every school in the state. So I think that gives you a great entity to go through. They know who to contact and how to make your voices heard. There are several questions. Let's scroll down here. Keep coming in. Y'all have a lot of great questions about technology infrastructure and broadband, and whether or not these funds, both on the state and the district level, can be used for that purpose. John, do you want to speak to that?
I can speak to it some, I think. So when the first round of funding came out last summer with ESSER 1, most of our district spent about a third of their funds on laptops and Wi-Fi. We also spent some of our funds on connectivity, paying licenses for our school district for learning management systems that would interface with the learning object repository that David talked about. We also used some of our money to outfit our public school buses with Wi-Fi. We know that access to high quality technology, Wi-Fi internet is important as we look at life in the 21st century. But I know that it's going to take a lot of folks from a lot of different perches working together to make that need a reality for South Carolina. Again, I think if I can, Superintendent Spearman, and that we are certainly helping in ways we can. Our school districts are doing likewise, and we hope that we have other partners and other organizations that will also join us in this effort to improve the Wi-Fi capability and the technology capacity of South Carolina, particularly, again, in our most rural communities.
Right. And we have made a lot of progress during the pandemic on broadband access. There's a lot of work going on. I've been on the phone in the last few days with legislators from across the state who are working with the Office of Regulatory Staff, broadband providers, and we anticipate additional funding from the federal government, not necessarily coming to the Department of Education, but for improvement of broadband access. So I think people are on it. I think the providers are working well together, not a turf battle, but really trying to see who can do it the quickest, the best, and the most efficiently. So I'm real pleased with the growth, but there's still a lot of room for that, and I think you're going to see continued improvement. But we'll do our part, as John has said, in any way if we can help supplement. But I don't think it's our responsibility to take a lot of the money that's supposed to be going for instruction and spend it on just broadband access when there are other ways that can be funded in the state. So, but we'll watch it closely and certainly want to do our part if necessary. But I really think that the state needs to step up, and I hope the federal government will too, with specific funding for that.
Thank you. And I believe we've addressed all of the written questions that we've gotten. you can continue to ask questions of us in written format by emailing us at communications@ejsc.gov. We've had some really great input, just feedback with people sharing as they hear questions answered and asked. So I really appreciate that. That'll be very important as we continue to craft this plan over the next several weeks. And of course, you can also use the feedback form to provide input as well. But Superintendent Spearman, do you want to close this out with a few comments?
Well, I'm reading, and I appreciate different folks giving some very good suggestions. I'm been reading through those, particularly about transportation for if students stay for after school programming. They may not be able to get home because the bus is already gone. I think that's something, gentlemen, we need to look at. So I appreciate that. There are a few, on the start date and those kinds of things that's going to be difficult for us to do. It's out of our authority, but I get it. I understand what you're talking about there. We do, in talking with districts, we do anticipate that districts are looking at broadening their summer school activities, the availability to more students. Some are talking about adding days on the LEAP days that we did at the beginning of the last year when students came back in small groups. So a lot of the assessments could be done and teachers could work one-on-one in very small groups with their students. That seemed to be very popular. So we're anticipating districts will be doing that. Again, I'll just challenge you all to help us with ideas, particularly on where do we find good folks to come in and help when we already have a teacher shortage. And I saw your suggestions there. Those all were very, very good. But I appreciate it, and we appreciate the dialogue. I hope you'll continue sending us questions, but also suggestions. And I'll say, if you feel uncomfortable with giving suggestions to your own school district, if you'll send them to us privately and let us know your thoughts, we can relay those messages for you. And the other thing, I think we all know that some school districts have more expertise available to them to write the plans. Please know that John and his staff and all of our folks at the department, we're going to be holding hands with those districts and helping them to make sure we get this done. So it's a lot of extra work and it's coming very fast at us, but we're hats off to all these folks that you see before you tonight and others behind them who are working on this. But please give us your ideas and don't hesitate. I'm very excited about what we might be able to do together in our state.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to leave the chat and the Q&A open for, I'll leave it open for the next 10 minutes or so, just so anyone who wants to add input has an opportunity to do that. But thank you all for joining. We've gotten some really good input, and we're looking forward to what we receive in the future.